right, let's get down to business. Today we will be discussing Squid Game. It is very popular on Netflix. I would put it under my Netflix picks. I will be doing another Netflix picks and breaks as more things have come on Netflix. Link is in the description to my part 1 and part 2 of Netflix picks and Netflix bricks. The picks are my top favorites on Netflix that I recommend you watch. And the bricks, the crap, garbage, sin dipped in misery that no one should ever lay eyes on. So let's get right down to it. I will be doing as quick as I can synopsis about Squid Game. Stay tuned for the latter half of this video if you want to discuss or if you want to hear me discuss the numerology used in Squid Game. So let's go. A loser who lives off his mom steals from her on his daughter's birthday. He's addicted to gambling and he's seen betting on a horse with his daughter's birthday money and wins, getting the attention of all the bums he owes and loan sharks. They chase him, causing him to lose the winnings from a pickpocket. We'll find out who she is later. They give him a week to pay back what he owes or else he'll lose his kidney, then one of his eyes. This is really hardcore. Warning for everyone. It's a spoiler warning review. It's everything explicit content, blood, gore. For his daughter's birthday, he decides to gamble on a claw machine. As we'll come to find out, this man is a gambling man. Thanks to some boy that just was watching him struggle, he finally gets a box from the claw machine. He gets a present to give to her, and honestly, he should have looked inside, but the theme with him is he's attracted to chance. Never forget, and the end won't disappoint you as much or surprise you. We see he's divorced 3 years, in fact, with the little money he had left that also at that racetrack place, he gave a little bit of his winnings to the woman that was taking everybody's money. He literally came at the end of the day and said, I need that back, because he had nothing to give to his daughter for dinner. His mom told him to go out and have dinner with her. And so he's like, I gotta go do that. After dinner, we get a brief scene with him and his ex-wife, keeping her distance, as we all should as women. Exes are not your friends, especially the bums and hooligans. Why were you ex to begin with? No after-marital affairs. She knows what's up. You cannot come in. You can only see your daughter. You cannot come in. You are trash. Someone is bound to be petty. But back to business. So earlier on, when those loan sharks came to him, they made him sign something in blood. Never sign anything that you didn't read, and never sign anything in blood ever. Turns out, after getting hustled by a dude playing street games, he learns that he gave his rights away in that transaction. But now he has an opportunity to play Squid Game. But technically, he's already begun the game. Like I said, the loan sharks made him do that. We learned about his ex-wife's plan to leave Korea to the U.S. from the mom of the loser. She has commentary about why it's wrong from a cultural standpoint. The fact that she'll leave, she'll never come back, or she'll forget Korean and she'll forget her family and her roots, basically. Basically, that's what happens. America is like trash. We're trash. Our government is like telling everybody that they're about to be broke. Like, freaking, this place is garbage. When you come here, everything is stripped from you. You're told to assimilate. It's terrible. People from other countries get names like Sally, Mary, Robert, Tom, so they can fit in better and they don't have to worry about half of the freaking discrimination for their name that they're already going to get for what they look like if they're not post-colonialism. Our quote-unquote protagonist, Seong-gi, calls the shape people to officially enter Squid Game because he was given a number on a card with a square, triangle, and circle on it. That'll be important later. They pick him up and the game begins. The game truly begins. They gas him out so they can travel to some lost island. When our main protagonist wakes up, he looks at his chest and notices that he has a number. 456. He looks up to the sky and it just so happens that there's 456 players in this game, which means he was the very last. In this room, there's like Disney World type music playing. Anyone who's been to Disney World in the morning knows about the music they play in the morning. It's like, It's like really cool. So the guy that he meets, the old man, has the first number, which is interesting. I'll tell you about the numerology at the end. He tells our protagonist, and I will be referring to these characters, if not by their name, I will be using their number interchangeably, so it's easier to follow. Number 1 tells him he's gonna die from a tumor. And we meet 101, Gyoksu. I call him Snake Dude because he's got a snake tattoo. He's a loser, scrub loser. He once, quote unquote, helped 067. Say Bayon. I think that's how you say it. The pickpocket. She's from North Korea, quote unquote, a defector. She escaped North Korea and went to China. Her mom was found and sent back. Her family, her dad, older brother, and I don't know who else. I think grandparents died in North Korea before they started leaving. And before we get to meet anybody else reeling, the shape people pull up. There's a dude that's got a square in his face. The square people are the managers. There are the rectangles who usually have guns. They're the soldiers. And then the circles are the worker bees. They basically tell everyone they're about fairness, and that's the key thing about this game. Always remember the fairness. The shape people put them on blast, and each player is exposed how horrible they are and all the debt they've got. They explain the rules. There are 3, in fact, that we all have to remember. 1, a player is not allowed to stop playing. 2, a player who refuses to play will be eliminated. And 3, if the majority decides to end the game, it will end. Those are basically their only rights. They're all told to chill and, okay, this is how we're going to do this. And everyone kind of stops asking questions after they're told, you didn't believe us until we showed you money. And basically talking about that dude doing the street games. Something you must notice here. There's no money in the pot until people start dying. So technically, not everyone can make it to the end. It's literally impossible for everyone to make it to the end. They know people are going to die. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. So we meet 199. His name is Ali, a very stereotypical Arabic name. I hate that. Like, maybe somebody's named Ali somewhere, but like that's like a very stereotypical name. I wish there were more dark-skinned Asian representation in this, but he's the one we get. He falls into the useful dark-skinned sidekick who only serves others, selfless, innocent, and naive. He only does one bad thing, but it's kind of like, oh, well, that bad thing was okay because this happened. And I see it. We're going to keep seeing it until white supremacy is gone. Like, I can't explain to you enough that this happens everywhere. This happens all the time. But we also meet 111. I think his name's Young. We're just going to call him the doctor. And then we see Sungwoo, 218. Seonggi sucks him off for the entire duration of the whole thing. They're best friends. They grew up together, and they're basically kind of foils to each other. Sungwoo is supposed to be this guy who's like top of his class and went to university, while Seonggi is some loser deadbeat. But there are certain people who know each other, like Snake Guy and Pickpocket. They know each other from there's a side secondary characters who are married, and there's just every person is connected to someone outside. But the only person we see who doesn't have a connection to anyone in there is 001. So remember that. And then while all this is going on, there's somebody watching. I call him the man in black. He calls himself the front man. He drinks to everyone's death. But before we talk about him, let's start getting into the death. The first game is red light, green light. Ironically, the name that they had to say in order to initiate the game, when they said password, it was red light, green light, because that was the first game. So everyone realizes that everything's horrible and everyone's going to die if they get eliminated. 199 serves his purpose and saves 456 from dying. He caught him. This is his first act as useful, helpful, dark-skinned character who only exists to get close to the end but fails. This is proven when he says the reason why he saved him. He says, "You're alive. That's all that matters." And maybe he said something different in the Korean version. They botched a lot of the writing and a lot of the translation, even when you listen to the Korean and you see the subtitles. I saw someone on Twitter post that Homegirl, aka 212, aka Hanminyo, she was given the rawest of deals. The rawest of deals. They make her say things that she doesn't say, and it just makes her look pathetic when she's not a pathetic character. But because I did dub, I'm not really into sub unless it's the only way I can watch it. Like, when I watch anime, I like the dub, even though every person sounds the same because they get the only 3 people that they ever use for freaking voice acting, just 2 to 3 white people, and 2 of them are guys and 1 of them's a girl. But I watch the one where it's dubbed. And that's basically what he says. He doesn't even give a reason why he saved him. It wasn't because, oh, well, I don't want to see someone die. He has no agency except to serve as that dark-skinned person. Like, don't come at me with that. Like, just accept that and we can move on. We get to see what the shape people do with the bodies. So they put them into this black coffin box with a pink bow. Like, they're shipping them off somewhere. But they just burn them. So I really don't know why they do all that hurrah. I think it's a visual. This show is very awesome. The cinematography is phenomenal. Every angle matters. And that's something that's missed in American Western culture and our TV and our movies, because we're all about flash and we're not about symbolism. But they had everything. They had action and symbolism. We can do that. We're just trash at it. So when everyone gets back to the thing, they're all upset because they're like, wow, we didn't think we were going to die. And the shape people are like, look, y'all don't have to be here. And basically, there's this girl. I call her Homegirl. We're going to call her Homegirl for the majority of the time. Homegirl, aka 212, is the first to beg and leave and swears to pay her debts and all that, and says that she's got a kid she's got to name and all that. After a few women beg on their knees, a bunch of men join too, because they're like, oh, well, if women are going to do it, we're going to do it. The shape people, like I said, they say, you don't have to be here. They remind them of the rules. And then dude that is a little too up and up about this situation will notice every time there's a clause or every time something's going on. Old dude that 456 keeps sucking off because he's his best friend. Song-woo, 218, he's like, wait a second. If the majority of us say we want to leave, then let's leave. Let's go. He's the one that reminds everybody of that rule. And they're like, you know what? Okay, fine. Let's have a democratic vote. Who wants to leave and who wants to stay? And some people start clicking the button. Even the girl that was begging Homegirl is like, I don't care because it's fine. It's just as bad out there as it is in here. I say, even though she was the first one begging on her knees, like, girl, Homegirl, come on, Homegirl. Homegirl acts real annoying the entire time. However, most of it is lost in translation. She's actually a very smart player. There's a reason why she makes it to the end. Semi-end. So basically they vote from last to first. So the first person to vote is our main protagonist, 456. And then the last person to vote is 001, who is the old man. And it's tied. It's literally tied. It's struck down the middle. So he's the deciding factor. And this is a very interesting point. He chooses to leave. He chooses to leave. I'll explain to you why he chose this. Because if you're here, hopefully you've already seen this, and this is just a rundown so that when I talk about the numerology, it all makes sense. From what I could see, I didn't see everyone when I watched this because I watched this twice. 456 and 199 wanted to terminate, but 101, 067, and 218, I think, wanted to stay and keep going after they heard the money just went up. Like, at this time when they're voting, while they're voting, the money's coming down. And the only reason why it's coming down is because people died already. That's why I said, I don't think anyone can get any money unless people die. Even though they kind of lead them to believe everyone has a chance, they intentionally make sure that they sweeten the pot while people are trying to leave. So basically, like I said, the old man decides to stop it and everyone's thrown back onto the ground naked and tied up, left in, like, literally in the dirt. And they're like, okay, go home. And we basically follow everybody's life after that. All the people that we saw, like Snake Dude and the pickpocket. The Snake Dude stole from his boss. He's a gang and everyone's after him. So he's like, you know what? I'm gonna just go back to the game. And then the pickpocket was like going to see her brother. And he's like, I want to go home. I want to see mom. I want to see our family again. So she used the money that she stole from 456 to hire an investigator, a person that they go and help people get out of North Korea. 456 and 067 were dropped off together. Song-gi kills his mom figuratively and literally because he was like, oh, I swear on my mom that I'm not going to talk to you about the money you stole from me if you let me go, because he's tied up. And she's like, okay. So she unties him and he's like, where's my money? And she's like, you trash. So that comes in later because the mom eventually dies. And it's kind of like all this is just figurative. Literally, this whole game, the Squid Game, everything that's going on right now is basically a representation of life. So when 456 gets up, he goes straight to the cops. They call the shape people and a woman answers and she's like, oh, pervert, it's nighttime, da 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 da. And like I said, 456, he learns his mom's diabetic and she's on the verge of losing her foot and maybe her leg. She still leaves and goes to work because she's like, you know what? I need to go make some money because you're not making money and we can't afford these bills, so I can't stay up in there. And he's like, everything's bad for him. And then there's this B-side story involving a cop. Like, it just so happens to juxtapose to the misery and suffering. The rent on his brother's room is unpaid. The fish are dead and he's missing. He believes his brother is in Squid Game because he heard that dude talking about they took us and da-da-da-da-da. 456. And another thing about Ali is he's always calling his peers sir. That's annoying. And yeah, maybe they're 2 years older, but that's just inappropriate to be so formal. And no one else is like that. Sung-woo even tells him, don't call me sir. And he still does. He's like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I will kiss your feet. Like, please, just to let you know, even in Korea, there is colorism. They specifically had Ali be that schnivelly way because he's seen as someone who's strong and all that. He picks up this later down the line when there's a fight. He picks up this thing and he swings it and he's supposedly so strong and he's not that muscular. He's so strong because those are specific traits that are associated with darker skinned people. Brute strength. And then being this helpful, I will scoot and I will lick your butt cheeks for you. Ali is like that. He has no agency. The only agency he has is to his family. And that's something you can put on any man. He doesn't have his own agency. That agency comes from his role in this whole thing. Everyone has a family to protect. Everyone has something that means something to them. But we follow Ali, aka 199. He confronts his boss. He's making all his employees work for free, literally. And Ali fights him and tries to get the money. He leaves with what he owes him and he gives that money and it's bloodstained. So that's also another symbolism thing. It's bloodstained money he gives to his wife and he's like, okay, go home, take this money and I promise I'll be back with more money. And she's like, what's going on? And she's just like, okay, she's got a baby and like they're gonna go because he is basically gonna be under arrest because he just assaulted someone and everyone looked at him and saw it. Everyone saw it. So he could possibly be arrested. He's going back into Squid Game. And speaking of arrests, Sung-woo calls his mom and he's like, yeah, I'm going on a business trip. I'm not gonna be back for a while because he's going into Squid Game. He's gonna return to Squid Game because the cops are there for him. He is what you call a white-collar criminal. This name rests in white supremacy. It makes it seem like it's lighter than what it really is when he's taking people's money. He's doing something that doesn't involve him directly shooting and killing someone. He's taking the money out of their hands, taking it out of their family's mouths, the food, without having to get his hands bloody. But ironically, people say he's the most realistic person, but I think I'll get to what I think he is when we get to the end. So he goes back into Squid Game. 001 and 456 meet outside the game. 001 says, oh, what are the chances? He says this. Remember, he keeps talking about, oh, what are the odds that we meet? Oh, that's really interesting. And they've never met before, but they just so happen to meet close by. Interesting. So 001 says the torture is worse outside than in the game. The reason why freaking old dude goes back to Squid Game is because he talks to the old man before he makes his ultimate decision. Because he's like, oh, you can go back. He thinks about going back, but he doesn't until he has this conversation with the old man. But the whole thing before he goes back to Squid Game, he begs his wife for money for his mother's diabetic treatment. And I would have just I wouldn't even have let him in my house. He wouldn't have been in my house. So the stepfather returns and sees them inside. It looks very strange because they're alone in a room. The kids get home and he's like, I'm gonna leave. Even though he said he was there for the daughter. He didn't even say hi to her. He's just like, oh, now that I've seen her, I'm gonna leave. Stepfather comes out and gives him the money. This is a key component to what this dude is about. So freaking Main protagonist, 456, is given the money for his mom. His mom could live right now with that money. And the guy says the only string attached to this money is you don't come around this house anymore. Stop trying to wheedle your way back into this girl's life when you don't care and you don't make good decisions. His best bet was to have taken that money and been about his business. He was giving that money to his mom. He threw it back in his face and punched him in front of his daughter. He leaves. And now that he has almost nothing left in this old world, he is officially going back to a Squid Game. So the B story clashes with 456. The cop talks to him about the Squid Game, but Sung refuses to tell him about anything. He's like, oh, I don't know, because he's trying to protect Squid Game, because he's trying to go back to Squid Game. So at this point, everyone gets sent back. Everyone does the same thing, gets back in the car, gets gassed out, freaking gets sent to the island again. But this time, we get to see what really happens to them. We get to see them undress them and put them in their clothes, put them in their beds, and all that jazz. So that happens. They all come back and they're all waking up. They're acting like, okay, another day, another dollar. Over time, we basically see how the game operates behind the scenes. B story pulls up. The cop steals a shaped person's outfit. 456 admits he only returns to Squid Game because of the old man, like I said. The players make their own teams because they're like, you know what? We need to stick together, da-da-da-da, and whatnot. 212 plays women's simp, talking about, oh, you're good looking to the snake dude, which he's not, and he's a jerk. And she's also mean to 067, super annoying. 067 sneaks about looking for a way out or something. She brings a knife in the second time she comes in. 001 talks about his family a lot, which is a key component to basically admitting to his connection to the game. 212 goes to the restroom to use her prison purse, and she smuggled in some cigarettes. 067 learns they're melting sugar because she goes to the restroom as well, and she goes into the vents. When I first saw that, it looked like they were like melting arsenic or something and some green thing. I don't know why it looked green, but that's what I thought. So they think that that has something to do with the next game that they have to do. The doctor is given this piece of cloth that looks like it's a shaped person's outfit, which is a hint that the freaking doctor is working with the shape people. He learns what the next game is going to be. So, game 2. Shuguro Hanakamba. They must pick a shape. Circle, umbrella, star, or triangle. Now, before knowing anything, I would personally want the star, but triangle is obviously the best bet because circle may not get you through it. And umbrella is just suicidal. 218 tells his team to separate and choose different shapes, which is more evidence to prove that this dude's a loser scumbag, because why would everybody go different places? It just sets them all like, okay, they all have a different problem to solve. And he thinks about telling our main protagonist, hey, I know what it is. Or he has a hint of what it is, and he still didn't tell him. So freaking they get some honeycomb sugar. It's a Korean street snack. It's really cool. They melt sugar, they put some oil in it, they mix it up, bubble it, then they put some freaking, I think, baking soda, and it bubbles up, and then they pat it down, and then they put a shape in there. The goal is to get the shape out of the honeycomb without breaking the shape. So freaking they do that. And our main protagonist, 456, has the umbrella because he's like, oh, my mom always got me umbrella, da-da-da-da, his thing. He basically defeats all the odds. He always has, like, the hardest situation, the most dire situation, and he gets through it. 212 helps 101 with her lighter that she brought in with her cigarettes. The people we know make it through, of course, but 111 is told to go somewhere else after he finishes his triangle, and we don't know what he's doing at this time. 119 goes postal. He's basically an outlier of society. Every single person that we see, no matter how insignificant to our own story that we're following in Squid Game, represents a type of person in society. He's what I call the outlier. And he takes someone by freaking needle point and takes the guy's gun, and he tells him to take his freaking hood off, and he shows that he's just a kid, so the guy that went postal shoots himself. The overseer comes out and he kills the guy that took his hat off, and he's like, if they see your face, you die. And that's basically what we learn about this situation. So 101 finishes, of course. 212 is like, since I helped you, or you can help me, and he's like, basically you're part of our team. She's basically a groupie. Their team ends up getting seconds at lunch, causing an issue between society. 101 beats a guy to death over a freaking egg. The shape people let it happen, and the rules only matter to them when they matter. And that's another thing that I'm going to bring up later about 001. So this death opens the door for debauchery at night. So they're like, okay, if this can happen, anything can happen. So the guy, the snake dude, keeps some glass from their drinks that they had at lunch, and he basically keeps it like a shiv. Back to the B story. So the cop is costume hopping because people are catching on to him being a part of the shape people, and they're like, okay, why don't you know what you're supposed to do? Why are you talking when you're not supposed to talk? People are getting upset. But the guy that was killed in the freaking previous game because he took his helmet off was the guy who was on to the cops. So good thing that he died, because he would have been found out right then. Now, lo and behold, we know that the doctor, aka 111, is helping some of the shape people make some money on the side within the system, harvesting organs from the eliminated players in exchange for the info on the games. And he's like, you know what, like, I'm tired and all that because I don't get no sleep. He does it every night. And they're like, playing games, they're like, get out of my face, we don't care, just do this. All while no one knows this is going on. This is just their side hustle to their main hustle, which is being guards of this place. As of right now, we don't know how they're chosen. 101 plans to kill as many people as possible at night so that they have less people to contend with in the games. The shape people cradle the madness rather than stopping it right away, which, again, like I said, that means the rules don't matter. But no one said they couldn't kill anybody in this situation, but they love to talk about, oh, you can't use violence for certain things, but they don't not specify you can't use violence in other circumstances. So 067's fate is foreshadowed at night whenever the glass hits her in the back because someone had a bottle and they threw it at her. The shape people don't intervene until 001 tells the cameras that he's scared and he doesn't want this to happen anymore. This made me think he was related to the man in black because he actually made it seem like he cared about that person when it happened. So, story B, the cop in shape people's clothes asks 456 if he knows a man by the name, but he asks him the name and he's like, no, I don't know. We're all numbers here. So it gets 456 to thinking, you know what, maybe we should learn each other's names. So he starts asking around to people, what's your name? What's your name? Everyone starts to learn their names. And the old guy is like, I don't know what my name is. Basically, he says he forgot, but he's playing games. And I hate that after that whole situation, 101 and 212, aka homegirl, go to the restroom, and while smelling like freaking eggs and seltzer water, they have intercourse in the toilet. It's disgusting. She tries to get information out of him because she knows that he knows something, because he's also protecting the doctor, because the doctor was like, you know what, for protection at night, please spare me and I'll tell you what the next game is. And he's like, okay, good. So he knows the next game. And that's why when the next game happens and they say, okay, get into groups of 10, the guy picks the strongest people because he knows what the game is. And our group is like, you know what, since we've got a girl already and we've got freaking old people, let's find some guys. And the girl ends up getting a girl. We're going to call her Cynic. The old guy doesn't get nobody. The Indian guy gets a dude, and they're kind of just sitting there like, we need one more person. We also meet Religious Nut 244. They argue about faith after the whole tug of war games. This game proves that they want people to die, because this game, while every other game that we've seen thus far, you could possibly win without dying, tug of war makes it to where one group is going to survive. It's not one of those tree type of competitions where two people go and then it's just two people at the end and there's one victor team. There's like 3 teams that go against another group of teams, and out of those 3 teams are going to survive because it's between 2 teams, if that makes sense. The old guy is on their team, and he basically tells them how to win tug of war, which is also another reason why we should be looking at him, because it's like how you know all this stuff and cool and whatnot. By the way, I didn't tell you, but homegirl got shafted by that dude, even though she had sex with him. He's like, after this game, you could join back up with us, but this game, you're not going to play with us, because he knows what it is. So she must go with our group of people, which has Ali and the Cynic and 067 and 001, Sungyeon. So, yay, they win tug of war, cool. We get to see the doc. Mr. 111 goes to extract more organs for the side hustle. 199 and 218 take first night watch, because they're like, we can't trust these people, so we're going to keep watch just in case they want to play games at night again. They make their bond stronger, making the situation at the end that more annoying to me. And you know what? This is where I get really upset about Ali's character. Not only are you going to give him a name like Ali, like I said, any Indian person could be named Ali. But what I'm saying, it's the equivalent of a Bonquisha. It's the equivalent of a Shanae. It's the equivalent. It's that stereotypical name that anyone could be named that on Earth. Maybe if you scan everyone on Earth, there's someone. And yes, maybe there's a common name that you could replace that with. But not every white person is named Cletus or Huckleberry Finn. We don't do that to white people. White people get to have regular names. But when we put dark-skinned people or ethnic people, especially in a situation like this, like I said, colonialism has something to do with Korea doing this in particular thing. They made Ali a certain way. They made him kind of schnivelly. They made him kind of have no agency other than to serve. And he is 33 years old, confirmed in the show. He should not be calling his own peers sir. It's odd. Just adds on to his stereotypical helpful brown person trope. But let's revert back to the story. So like I said, the doc doesn't get any sleep and he gets upset. Some of the shape people are delivering organs for the money, unbeknownst to the people above them, like the higher ups. Doc goes ballistic, and when they refuse to hold up their end of the bargain, he starts to kill people and whatnot. While story B's happening, the cop does more digging for his brother and evidence, because he's like, what's going on here? 111 is killed. Rip Doc. Cop learns the shape. He thought that the shape people killed his brother because he had one kidney. He's like, my brother gave me his other kidney, because they were talking about a person that they botched in the organ removal. And they're like, oh, it was a girl. And I'll let you know it's because we raped her. And it's just like, no one asked you about that. It's like really gross. That was kind of a gross thing. Glad he died. So the cop's like, well, my brothers could still be out there. Men in Black learns they're selling organs, and he really doesn't care. He just cares about the game being equal. And let's put a pen in that. Like I said, this freaking people love to talk about how things are equal. So the cop learns his brother was a part of the Squid Game because he looks in the records and sees his name. He's like, okay, wow. So he gets seen and people are like, all right, there's a dude up in here. He leaves evidence behind. So they're like, the hunt is on for the freaking cop. Like I said, there's different shapes in Squid Game. And I think that the triangle represents power, the square represents control, and the circle represents chaos. Before we go on to the next one, that's what I believe. So game 4 is where I figured out that this was going to be very, it was kind of like, I knew where it was going, okay? They all have to pair up with a partner. 101 Snake Dude pairs up with some creepy dude. 067 goes up with the Cynic. 218 and 199 get together, aka Jerk Dude and Ali. 001 is left alone and believing unpaired will be eliminated. 456 grabs his hands and takes a chance with the old man. Literally, he takes a chance. Every time you think that there's a chance to be tad, this dude's taking it, okay? Minyul, aka Homegirl, aka 212, is left without a partner. And the pairs go off together. Each team has 2 bags of 10 marbles. The group find out they must play a game to gain all 20 marbles. The team must go against each other, basically. Snake Dude wins with 1 marble. The Cynic gives up for 067 because she has no family and she hears her story and she's like, you know what, go to your brother and your mom, because I don't have anybody left. And this is where I got really angry. I already knew that Ali was marked for death. Literally, you could have taken one aspect away from his personality, like maybe not have him say sir so often, maybe not have him be snivelly, maybe have him have some agency, maybe not be so... When I say innocent, I don't mean make him schmeasly. There's a difference between schmeasly and snively. Snively means, oh, let me do anything for you. Schmeasly means, let me do anything for myself. I'm not saying him be selfish. I'm just, you have to understand racism and you have to understand stereotypes to understand why I don't like Ali, his character. But the whole thing, 199 almost wins, but he's tricked like a child, adolescence, baby, because freaking 218, aka Sungwoo, says, okay, give me your thing. Like, I'm telling you, if anyone said, give me your, and I don't care if he's like, oh my goodness, you are so cool, give me your marbles, that was an automatic game over for him. I already knew. So he runs around for like 10 minutes and he's like, okay, what do I do next? He gave him these strange instructions, like go to people, go find someone that's got old people but young people, and then let's meet back here in 3 minutes. He gave him just enough time to go up to the guards and say, hey, I got these marbles. And I don't understand why he had to sit there and watch him die, basically. He heard him die. He didn't have to sit there. He could have went inside, but he sat there and waited to hear the gunshot go off and hear the voice say 199 is eliminated. That was annoying. Hate it so much. So more trickery ensues with the old man in 456. If it wasn't obvious to those paying attention, the old man has been faking dementia and allows 456 to live. He fakes his death because he knew the next game wasn't made for an elderly man. And speaking of which, let's talk about freaking next game, Game 5. Game 5 has them choosing between the numbers of 1 and 16. This is where we see the VIPs come into play, and they're basically like... They represent freaking wealthy people. They're white people. I heard the dub, so they sounded like some of them were dubbed by Asian people, but it's a Korean drama, so I don't expect anything less than them to use their own people because that's awesome. I love ethnicity. I love diversity. So basically, they've got these masks. They're very appropriate masks. They're animals, and they're not only animals, but they are predators. So that's symbolism for how they get their money. And it's a gold mask, so it basically represents lavishness. The cop eventually makes it in here and freaking gets sexually harassed by one of these guys who are one of the VIPs, and it's kind of annoying, but he doesn't get away with it. And he freaking records him and says, tell me what you know, basically. But before all that, let's talk about Game 5. The contestants must remove their shoes. And notice they said remove the shoes. They didn't say they couldn't use them. They must remove their shoes and choose between 2 glass paths. Each spot has either a regular glass or tempered glass. And they must go 1st to 16th. And first guy is some snivelly dude. The last guy is our guy, 456. Everyone dies by process of elimination or by murder. Homegirl goes out like a G and takes 101 with her. A guy who was once a glassmaker figures out which glass is tempered and pretends to not know anything until everybody who is a threat to him dies. And then 218 kills him at the very end. 218, 067, and 456 are all who are left. But the bridge blows up and maims them, but fatally wounds 067. Before she can get any aid, 218 kills her. And we go to the final game. SQUID game. Long story short, best friends fight, and the shape people provide them with steak knives, like at dinner before she died, because they were able to eat after being fed freaking raw potatoes and freaking raw corn and an egg. They're finally given a steak meal, and that girl doesn't eat because she's about to die and all that. But with the steak knives, they freaking fight each other in SQUID game. Well, B-side story's going on. What happened to the cop earlier? He runs and he tries to get all the information out, but there's no signal. He learns that his brother is the man in black, or the overseer, and they both shoot each other, except the cop goes off a cliff. 456 wins and goes a freaking year without touching his money, living as a bum because his mom died, and he's traumatized from all that crap. He gets a card from Gambu, which, surprise, surprise, 00 freaking 1 is freaking alive, and he's the first player, and I'll tell you about the freaking numerology in a second, but he's sitting on his deathbed at the top of a freaking high building inside. 456 realizes he's been behind it all and bets everything he owns on another gamble for the truth. 001, or who we know now as Ilnam, admits he was bored because he's rich, but surprisingly, he knew which games he couldn't win. Now, this is where I'm just sitting here, and I'm just like, he knew he wasn't going to jump on glass. That was the one he knew he couldn't win, and that's why he went out with the marble game, because regardless of all that happened, he knew that he wasn't going to die in any other game. He had complete control, and that's another thing. Even when rich people try to put themselves on our level, on the less wealthy people's level, they know that they have an out. While people who are homeless, while people are living paycheck to paycheck, don't have an out. That man went and was eliminated from the game, but he didn't die. Yes, he was going to die, but that doesn't matter. Those people could have lived beyond the years that they had. But it's just interesting. It's just a form of privilege that rich people get to just freaking go somewhere and pretend to be freaking poor. And that's why I have a problem with freaking Travis Scott or whichever Kardashian buying a freaking bus for their kids. Because, like, you don't want them to go to school. You just want them to freaking feel like they're freaking on a school. Like, it's like play poor, and it's freaking really annoying. But basically, this is where I complete my thesis. Squid Game is a metaphor for real life. Everything that happened is a metaphor. Death is death or debt or suffering. The money is money or advantages in life. The game of chance 001 or Ilnam and 456 plays at the end is a metaphor for those who are aided, because their whole thing is, so Ilnam on his deathbed is like, oh, do you think that somebody's going to help a poor drunk on the streets? Do you have faith in humanity? Because he obviously does not. And I think it's really interesting that if he put his money where his mouth is, he'd freaking go in that game and freaking die in that game. But he didn't. He didn't. He knew he didn't want to die in there. And that's why he freaking left for the freaking glass. But literally, somebody does help him and then he dies. Freaking 456 feels like he can let it go, but I think he doesn't really actually. He gets his hair dyed red to symbolize the burden of blood, because they discussed before Ilnam dies that, why didn't you touch your money? I learned that you didn't touch your money. Why aren't you touching it? And he's like, oh, do you feel guilty? And it's just interesting because it's kind of like he's distanced himself from people suffering, even though he's like, oh, how do we help people? He feels like he's helping everyone because he's like, oh, if you're not going to pay the debt, you might as well die. But it's interesting because it's like those people could have, I don't know. It's just really interesting. So basically at the end, for everyone who's seen Squid Game, you know that freaking doesn't get on the plane. He doesn't board the plane. He had a chance. He had to chance his freaking life one last time. So he basically interrupts a person being attacked basically by that hustler on the street. And he runs to stop him. But before he can, the hustler gets on the train and goes off. And he tells that guy, hey, don't go to Squid Game. He takes the card and he calls them and says, basically, I'm coming for you. That's basically the end of the show. Now, let's talk about the numerology. Now, I'm into astrology. I'm an astrologist enthusiast, and I firmly believe that astrology is real. When people talk about I'm rising, ascending, all that crap doesn't matter. To be honest, it doesn't matter. When people talk about, oh, there's 13 zodiacs, they're not. They're lying. There's only 12 because it only makes logical sense for them to be 12. 6 plus 6. It's a whole mathematical thing. It's all about mathematics. And numerology is also about mathematics, but there are different variations of numerology. There's literal numerology, where it's just like we look at it like literally. Like number 1, we would obviously know that means the first. So that's why Ilnam was number 1, because he was the first one to enter because he knew what was going on. Or we can do spiritual numbers, in which we actually get a deeper understanding of what one actually means. And I kind of want to do a little bit of both, so I'll talk about that. So without further ado, I'm going to get into the numerology part of the video. Like again, as I said, Astrology is my forte. I'm not really even adept in numerology, but I'm going to try my best. So let's start with number 1, Ilnam, the beginning, the first, and the alone. It's associated with being the one, being the lonely number, because even 0, there's no one there, no one can be alone, but every other number is associated with another number, and the only number that 1 is associated with is -1, and it's on the other side of the line. So 017 is the glass dude. It's associated with 8, or the infinite number, because 1 plus 7 is 8. Again, we see the lone number 1, and we see 7, which is an odd, holy number to some, but darning to others. 7 is like 7 deadly sins, 7 things that basically represents doom, or represents something not going according to plan. People usually associate 7 with lucky number, but it's one of those things where it's like a coin flip. 069 is the husband that commits suicide. It's associated with balance. 69, cradle each other, which is why he committed suicide, because he was alone. 070 was his wife, associated with doom, as I said, or the absolute, which is why the wife died. 101, which is snake dude, associated with information and mystical power. This relates back to how he controlled his men and his connection with the doctor, his inside info man, who he told him which game was going to be next. 111, the doc, is associated with separation from others. Not quite isolation, but the 1 means he's alone times 3. The doc gets 3 chances to play the game fair before he's killed. 199, Ali, side heavy number, meaning he was doomed from the beginning, revealing his weakness was having faith in others. The 1 shows optimism, and the 99 is 9 twice, double in influence from outside forces, which led him to do things like his family, and everyone was doing that for their family supposedly, but a lot of people were doing it for themselves. But I'm just letting you know how this number associates with Ali. 212, aka homegirl, associated with trust. 2 means she's shy of 1. She relies on her cleverness, like when she used her lighter to get the shape out of the sugar. 12 is the number of the zodiac. She eventually interacts with basically the entire cast for the most part. I don't know if she talked to the cynic, but I don't think so. 218, the Judas. 2 is the clever number. 18 is associated with 1 and 8. 1 plus 8 is 9. This reveals his ruthlessness. 240 is the cynic. Clever 2 again. We see 4 and 0. 4 is associated with peace. She's willing to lose for 067, and that's where that comes from. 244 was the pastor, the religious nut guy. 2 represents his cleverness. He didn't have much cleverness, but the 44, 4 plus 4 is 8, the infinite number. He loves to reference God and Christ and whatnot. 44, 4 and 4 is also doubling of 4. So it's doubled balance. It's like earth, air, water, fire. When we discuss 4, we talk about the 4 elements. We talk about things that are balanced. And then last but not least, 456, the last person, our main protagonist. Ascending numbers foretell his victory. 4 is balance. 5 is basically power. And 6 is basically, like, since 6 is at the end, he does not have stability, even though 4 is at the beginning. And that's why he can't rest until Squid Game is done, even though he participated in it. And that's basically it. That's all I have. If you guys have any more information about numerology and would like to discuss it in the comments, please share, like if you like. I really enjoyed Squid Game. It's one of my favorites. I would put it on my Netflix picks list of things people should watch. I am really excited for season 2, and I hope it doesn't get so like freaking popular that they don't take into consideration what they were going to do. Like, so many people like Squid Game now that I think it may fall into that category of only doing certain things to please the audience rather than just going for what was going to happen even if no one was watching. And that is a fear of mine. I fear it's going to become too popular. To be honest, I don't know where we're going to go from here. I thought that the cop dude survived, but I don't think he survived. I think if the front man was someone who was in Squid Games before anybody else, and then he's now the front man, I really think that Seung-gi is going to basically be the next front man, because he won't be able to let this go until he's like either a part of it or he stops it. One thing I didn't mention was basically when people died, all of the beds were taken out based on how many people died in that round. So basically at the end, you could see each of the games were on the wall. They were just hidden by the beds. One last rundown through all the characters and their symbolism. 001, Il-nam. He represents the 1%, the rich people who don't care about anybody but themselves and want to pretend they're helping people, but all while killing poor people en masse, making the world a little less disgusting in their eyes. I have no sympathy for Il-nam. I think anyone who sides with Il-nam loves to fester within a capitalist society and would never want to see it fall. 017, the glass dude, he represents the skilled, he represents the worker. He represents someone who works all day and gets some information out of it that may help him one day, but it doesn't give him enough money to pay his bills. 067 represents the despite all odds, which is where the 7 comes in. She was able to overcome everything, but she was killed. 069 and 070, the husband and wife, they're the husband and wife. They represent the couple who try to live their life and do the best what they can for their kids and ultimately fail. 101, aka Snake Dude, he represents the gangster dude who has no choice, being poor, to turn to organized crime or crime on the streets. He can't get a job. He has no degrees. 111, the doctor, he represents someone a little higher up on the scale. But not everyone can be successful. Not every doctor is going to be getting tons of figures or even getting a lot of people giving them any money. He lives in a place where not a lot of people can afford his services anyway. So he went and spent all that money to get that degree. He's in debt now. He is a doctor who is in debt. All for what? For poor people who can't afford his work that he put into it himself. 199 represents the man, dark-skinned. Of course, we have to put that into consideration because that is something that exists. That's what's happening. Ali helped his family succeed, did all he could, worked his fingers to the bone, literally, and couldn't make it through. 212, aka Homegirl, she was a single mom. She was willing to do whatever it took to feed her family, feed her child. She knew even if she died, they would get money. And she risked her life for others. 218, aka Judas, the white-collar criminal. He stole from other people because he thought he could. He's the one who gets up the ladder and realizes the grass is green on both sides. He wants to shoot higher than the grass. He wishes to shoot for the stars, but ultimately fails, burdened with the guilt. He kills himself. 240, the cynic. She represents the girl who was abused, girl who had everything taken from her and would rather give up her life for other people to live a life that she thinks was gone because she's poor and she can't afford any psychological help for her trauma. 244, the pastor. He represents the man clutched by the church. He puts all his money in the church and receives nothing. He still has no job. He still has no money, and his faith wavers. And last but not least, 456. He represents the one person who survives it all. Despite all odds, he makes it. But because this is a capitalist society, we are made to keep the wheel going. And that's what he's doing. But I'm done.